Happy Thursday, folks. How's everybody
Hello.
doing today?
Good. Yeah, why did we have an ignoring to go some in the first place?
So we can pull that one up, jump right into it.
I was just going through the notifications. I saw I had one, but
Yeah, no, that was the first one on the agenda. So ready for review. There was some code in the make file that was generating where is it down here, the header.html. And to generate that header file, it was using a tool that was over in .tool, but it was depending on the specs.go repo or path, whatever. Each one had their own Go mod. And so they were handling it before with a Go mod and knit to the top level and putting things in each one and doing some funkiness in there so that the tool would pull in the current version of the spec. That's just screaming to use Go
uh,
work.
yeah,
And
makes
all
sense.
this stuff, I don't think they wanted to get checked in. I mean, they wanted this code to be checked in, but they didn't want the output of generating the Go mod and the Go sum at the top level to get checked in. And Go work didn't exist when any of this stuff was written back in the day, so it's not their fault they didn't use it. We just didn't have it until now. So converted that one over to Go work. And in the process, I was able to get rid of that code in there. It was ignoring the Go mod, Go sum. I do ignore Go work. That's the common recommendation from the Go developers to not check that stuff in, let people use it on their own locally.
People still
Uh,
do it anyways, but yeah, agreed.
yeah, you could if we wanted to, but I figured, why not? And then the pandoc, this is just aligning it to what we've got over in, what's the repo that we're in right now? We're in distribution spec. So image spec has the same change to pandoc where I moved it from our local very old version, 292, migrate that up to upstream, which is a 3.1, but not all the way to head because there was a bug that we ran into at one point. And they haven't fixed that bug at last check. Does that kind of answer all the crazy questions around that one?
Yeah, repository rot.
Yeah. So cleaned it up. Hopefully, oh, we already got it merged. Awesome. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and update my conformance itself because I had a pending to do. I think Tianon saw that I've got a couple of go mod and go sums that were being ignored in my repo. The whole reason I saw this in the first place. So I will take those out and that way we'll have a little bit less rot in there. So, all right, that, get rid of that one. Cleans one review item up. I love it when you just knock these things out just like that. Um, we'll circle back to the other ones in a bit. I figure we'll go ahead and jump on to the agenda because these we're going to hit in the agenda anyway. So, Jeff, would you be interested in chatting about what things are looking like with pushing multiple tags? I can talk about it from the upstream community side.
I have zero updates to
Okay.
talk about other than I need to stop being lazy and go in and update the things based off of the feedback that you've put in and we've kind of had lately. Um, yeah, I kind of got to the point where we put it in there and rolled it out, and then I stopped pushing on this. So yeah, I need to
Yeah.
just get in here and update or accept some of the commits here. I think
Yeah.
everything you said is fine to me. So
Yeah. I feel like the only one to mention to highlight to folks, I was just realign this stuff to have the other URLs, and I realized, oh, there's actually a different upstream RFC that superseded this one, so I just bumped it up to the new RFC up there. I don't think that's any big issue, but just mentioning that. And I reworked this one just based off of a comment where we were back and forth on, hey, what does it mean when you have this stuff all on one line versus spread across? And the upstream RFC covers that, but just to make it more clear. But upstream from all of us, well, from OCI, we've got 3 implementations out there now, 2 from me and 1 from Zot. So getting some people out there to implement it and have something to show for it. And then Docker Hub's got at least a partial out there or something, so we can run that. And I have put this in the conformance test as well. So I feel like everybody is moving this direction. It's just once we get this stuff cleared up, get some people to put some thumbs up on it. But I like this in general. I like the shape of it. The one thing that I wanted to mention, unless folks have some more to discuss on this specific PR, is we had an alternative where I was looking at a completely different direction. I put the change in there in addition to all the conformance tests and whatnot, so we can ignore all of those and just jump right to the spec change itself that I was making. And I had a couple changes in there. One was to the pushing of the manifest, to push a manifest, and then I was including, if I push a manifest by tag, I was including the digest. We just reverse that, and that way we can push multiple tags, which is awesome. So I like the change we made. But there was a second half here that we don't have captured, which is when we're pushing, specifically when we're pushing with a patch request, how do we tell the registry what digest algorithm to use if it's not a canonical digest algorithm? And I think I want to rephrase this to make it clear that this is needed when you're using a non-canonical algorithm. Similar, I think we've done that in other places, so I want to reuse a little bit of that verbiage. I can get rid of all the conformance stuff because we've got separate conformance things going on and all the workflow stuff because that's separate over on the conformance side. But I was curious if anybody had hesitations if I resurrected this one for just the blob patch request to handle the digest algorithm. And I say blob patch request, but it's also any blob push can put this field on there, but it's only needed for the blob patch.
You said it's only needed for the patch, but this text says the post request. So are you updating to say it does not need to be on the post?
So the API changes to the post request because that's where the registry sees it. But the need within the whole API workflow is if you use a patch request, the registry can start receiving data and it doesn't get the digest algorithm until after it's already processed all the data.
Okay, so the post call, the patch flow.
Correct.
Okay. No, I'm okay with resurrecting that. That makes a lot of sense for the blob uploads.
Leave it for another second in case other people have thoughts on this one. There were a lot of comments. I'll try to go through and address some of the comments, concerns. There are folks that are looking for whether we should do it on headers. There are folks who are, we were going all different directions. I feel like just putting it as a query parameter maps pretty well with other stuff we've been doing. All right. So on the conformance side, we do have a prerequisite, which let's see, we need to get, hey, Tianon, you're on that list. Get you to put a check on that one. We need to get the conformance scripts themselves that process the conformance output to know about the new output. And so this one's sitting over in OCI conformance right now to be ready to receive it when that starts happening. And I'm more than happy to pull up examples if folks want to see what it looks like when things change. Doesn't look all that different. It looks a little different, but it doesn't look all that different for the existing because the existing workflows, there are only 4 of them. But once you start having 20 or so, this list automatically collapses and just highlights the stuff that you're not passing on. And kind of similar to here, all the stuff you're not passing on shows up at the top, and then this turns into a automatically collapsed list that you can expand when you want to. And if you have multiple versions, it collapses the latter version. But different than before, you can pull the test reports for each one individually. Before, it was only showing you the latest test report. So a few little tweaks in there. But mostly this is preparation for once we switch this over to the V2 conformance, you need those changes to be able to render it at all. It doesn't know how to parse it right now as it is. Oh, and failure is an option. So if someone submits a failing test result, that'll now show and come through the system. So that is there, ready for review. And the other one on the conformance redesign itself, Jeff, I know I asked the opinion and you said you liked option 5, but we probably should do option 4, so I picked option 5. I liked option 5 a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, I think in practice, it's fine. I think it was more, given that there is not an auth spec, this is sort of doing auth by I don't have the word. Yeah, convention, not like what we're essentially doing this based off of what we assume everyone is doing, which is largely accurate. But it's not technically defined, and so this sort of makes it more expected in that regard.
We can clean all this up in the working group for auth, and hopefully the not too distant future. There's high hopes there that we can get that moving again over there. But yeah, with that, this is no longer in draft. This is open, ready for reviews. The only thing I don't have checked on here is to run multiple registries in the GitHub Actions. And the reason I didn't go through that was because when I started looking at it, there's no way in GitHub to output a warning. Well, you can output a warning, but nobody's going to see it. All you get is a pass fail. And so from the output of the actions themselves, I didn't want to output that we passed a failing test. And I didn't want to fail it and block the merge. And so I just didn't test it. But it's easy enough to make some switches in there if we decide later on we want to re-enabled one. They're all in there and able to be run. The tweaks, and this is very very much in self-interest here. So let's see the conformance. There was thought there was a makefile change in here. There it is. I just didn't scroll down far enough. So the tweaks in here in the makefile on the conformance was a little bit to change from binary to command, because binary was actually making a test binary. And so I just needed something that was differently named so we weren't breaking anybody backward compatibility wise. And I added a second registry in there. And where I say self-interest, I picked the Ola reg since that's the one I've been testing with. I still have Zot in there, so you got that one as another one as an option. But when you run the conformance right now, it defaults to running it through with the Ola reg by default and runs tests against that. So we can do both, but since Zot was failing the test, I didn't want to make that a blocker for us. And Rob's not here today, so I know they're working on some stuff over on their side. They've been adding new features and functionality, so we'll get there. Also, over in the conformance, we had, not the conformance, the workflows. We had a workflow for the build on pull request and the exact same code over there for building a branch. So I just put the pull request branch in there so we didn't have to duplicate the code. That was one of those things, repo rot. Why didn't we do that before? So a few little tweaks like that. Otherwise, massive change. I'm expecting this will take a little while for folks to spend some time reviewing it, but it is no longer in draft state, so it is ready for folks to do their reviews.
Merge it.
I like that motivation there. Let's do it. Need to ship it squirrel.
It's pretty large. It might be hard to do a line by line on it, but uh,
Yeah.
is there a criteria that we should consider when reviewing it so we can or
So my favorite criteria, let me see, I've got this sitting somewhere. Yeah, here we go. My favorite criteria is just to pull up the branch where I've got this sitting on right now, pull up the directory, run some of these variables in there, kick off the conformance test and see if it reports that you did a pass or a fail. And if you failed and it's from your registry, fix the registry. And it's from the conformance test, report up the issue and let's get the conformance fixed. But this gives all the steps. Do a git clone on that or check out whatever, kick it off with a go run. And there's commands to run the Docker. There's commands to run the GitHub actions we were talking about last week. You can switch your GitHub action today to run against my fork. So sudo vimich dash distribution spec at, and then is the pr dash conformance v2 branch. So you put that instead of main. If you put all that in there, old variables or new variables, it should all work. So it'll warn you if you're using old variables, but it'll still work. And so all that stuff should be, I'm not going to say non-breaking, but minimally breaking. And if there are things that are breaking and we can fix them, let's get them fixed.
if I said something really annoying, would it make you mad if I said there's like some changes to spec MD and like some of those Go ones, we just get those merged in? Well, to be honest, like we could just I feel like we've been looking at this and you've been working on it for long enough that we could just merge it in and fix the problems like after it's merged. We don't have a pending release that this is going into. But if it's going to stay open, like some of the stuff could split out probably. Like what's the spec MD change? Is that
Some of it, cleaning up some YAML things. Whenever I go into a file and the linter flags it on me, I go ahead and clean it up. But the main thing was the conformance section. The whole reason I went into this was the conformance section in the spec MD had pointers in there saying, here's what we're running, here's the official certification, and kind of had a pointer over there looking at some of those things. And the requirements was no longer the pull, push, and a few other things. We've got more tests. And so APIs could be grouped into the following categories, but that was not part of the conformance. So I moved that out of the conformance section itself. So that was some of the indentation change. I moved the requirements out of conformance to say, here are some of these different categories we've got of APIs, but they are not requirements of the conformance.
I would at least put those in separate commits to the spec MD because sometimes we do a history view of the spec MD changes when somebody comes in. I won't name names. They say, "Hey, who changed the spec MD?" And
I mean, it's going to be me. I'll just take all the blame every time.
No, that wasn't you. That was somebody who's not here. Last time we completely reformatted it, but I think it's useful to at least have the spec MD in a separate commit, even if it's pending or even if it relies on stuff from the other change.
So, should we break apart the indentation and the linting changes from the rewrite of the
I'm not
conformance
trying to be
section?
that annoying. I was just saying just the spec MD into a separate commit.
Because the main reason I jumped in here was just because the conformance section itself, let's see, for more information, running that.
I mean, up to you.
Yeah.
Moving one file out is really simple. Like going line by line and moving it out is super obnoxious.
Yeah. I'm just looking back to my change to make sure. and then I point them over to the accepted conformance over there. So that was the big thing. One of the advantages when I changed the indentation was that everything got indented one less section. And my goodness, we have too many layers of indentation in that thing. So yeah, I mean, I can pull that out. Easy enough. I kind of want to change. Well, let's see, the git ignore, I can get rid of some of those things, but we just merged that on the other side. So I need to rebase that for the git ignore change anyway. I could
If
also
you
pull out the workflow changes.
you could, I for those ones, I think it's useful to do that. Not like a requirement. What I was trying to say is if you want to get those merged in sooner, so they run against the old version uh and then make that update, or like just get the workflow changes in before getting the conformance in. I don't know if there's any value in like running that against what's there, but
Guess the only problem is I did change a couple of other things in there, so might not be able to do
yeah,
all the workflow changes.
I'm it's not necessary. I think the spec MD is the only one that I would say is like we should separate out.
Okay. Easy enough to do. Take a note over here on this one.
Where can I request Copilot review of this? Make your life hell. 7,000 lines. Or is that like 7,000 lines? 6,000 lines? I bet Copilot could find a bunch of annoying things every few hundred lines.
Do I break the context after a while here?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm sure it will generate 200 lines and, you know, maybe a few of those will be useful, but
I mean, for the Copilot, if he's running on his own.
So for me, it was I had to enable it from my account, and then any PR I make, it's gonna have Copilot enabled, like review the PR.
Yeah, if you want it in the review comments, I'm guessing it would have to be my whoever's running over there. But if he's just running the fork on his machine saying, hey, review this change,
dude,
I
you
don't
got
know
to
it well enough.
enable. Sure, you have the free Copilot, just got to enable it.
Yeah, but what if I've intentionally disabled it?
Yeah, it can be annoying. I mean, for large changes like this, like I'm sure it will find like a bunch of useful stuff, but it'll be really annoying. Well, like useful as in like true, but uh
I need to check if I ran go fix against this. That's the stuff I do like, because go fix has a nice way of modernizing projects now. All right, anything more you want to chat about over here? Realize it's a ginormous PR, so
yeah, I mean that's what I'm kind of getting at is that I'm not going to spend the time to like read all 6,000 lines of code, and I don't think anybody else is. So like having like the an automated tool do it, or just merge it and find bugs along the way is I'm perfectly happy with that. I trust you completely, Brandon.
trust but hang after it all fails.
Well, I mean, yeah, you'll get blame when it breaks, but
Yeah, for me, the big thing is the more folks test this against your own registry, the better. So if we get this stuff tested ahead of time and folks give them more verifications that the conformance ran and looks good on their side, or at least where it breaks, they know why it's breaking, and that it's not the conformance test fault, then that's a good thing.
If okay, so let's just say we just merged it right now. Would that break a bunch of like stuff in the potential break a bunch of registries that are you running the conformance tests today?
Yeah, the people are going to notice are the people that have the action YAML that they're pulling directly from our main branch, which may be a fair number of people. This is supposed to be as backward compatible as it is. So it's looking for, hey, the old required variables, if you're using the new variables, awesome, everything is good. If you're using some of the old ones, I'd throw out a warning message in there of saying, hey, you're using a deprecated variable. I doubt anybody's even going to read those warnings because they show up a layer or two down. But that still works because I have fallbacks there for old variables. So,
Do we
oh,
have users who are pulling directly from main rather than pinning to the last release? I assume going forward we want users to pin to a tag for that.
I mean, it's a good question of what they've got out there. Are they disabled with the conformance test? So might not have anything in there right now. We would have to look to see what they have picked. CI, OCI conformance, and start check. Yeah, so people are pinning to main. Looks like they disabled because they're failing the conformance test, but I like their
Sure.
secrets. Um, but yeah, I would not be surprised there are people out there that are pinning to main. And if it breaks and it's not something that breaks their whole workflow, then okay. But we're probably going to find stuff that they weren't testing before.
Yeah.
And so some of these that are currently passing might not be passing later on. Well, that one will, but that's only because of reasons.
So I guess what I'm thinking is um kind of an order of doing things. Should we get it in, clear out any other pending items that we might want to get in for another spec release, and then get a tag out for 1.2, and then encourage people to switch to the 1.2 tag for conformance?
So the 1-2 tag is awesome. My encouragement is to stick with main on the GitHub action, but if they want to test against a specific version of the spec, my recommendation is that they set the variable OCI version.
That action, that's an actual action, right?
So it's an action and you can set the variable on the action.
No, I thought the new recommendation was not even to pin it by tag, but to pin it by hash.
Um, if you're worried about supply chain attacks, yes.
Well, I think everybody's worried about
So,
supply chain attacks right now.
I absolutely hear you
Wait,
where you're coming from,
so
and
we should make sure that there's no supply chain attack in here. That should be the only thing we do. We
I did
trust
the best
Brandon
I
that
could.
much? Wait, maybe I spoke too soon.
I did the best I could, but if you want to pin to a digest, but it's also on whatever the main branch is, and then keep that pin updated, that's awesome too. But the reason I'm kind of pushing that direction to set the variable for the version, like we've got variables here for all this stuff today, whenever they run this action, is because we can update our conformance to say, oh, we found some new data that someone might want to throw against a 1.0 registry, and it should still work on an old registry. So new data, old registry should still work, but we won't test new APIs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, yeah, I'm just wondering if we want the tags for the conformance, but then we're stuck basically bumping the OCI version spec for every conformance fix. That's not ideal.
That's why I tend to, if it's a spec change, we'll bump the version on the spec, but conformance, I'm trying to get people to just run against main. If not main, a pin version off of main, and then just maintain the pin.
Does GitHub Actions have something similar to like Go does, where you can do like a conformance slash tag version or something like that? Like with Go, you can do that with like submodules. It's like submodule name slash semver tag.
I don't know of any reason that it wouldn't work because it's just a tag.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't work because it's like a specific format of the tag. It's like the tag would actually be like conformance slash version. I don't know if there's anything like that.
Yeah.
Like if conformance is like, so you do like distribution. I think right now the action is in the root, right?
I mean, for
Am I reading that
example,
right?
yeah, the action is in the root. If I was to pin to or run sudo vimage distribution spec, I can say at pr-conformance-v2, and that works. And that's just the branch name. Similar for a tag, I think it's just looking for any reference over there that it matches.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was just trying to think of like if you're to tag it, then tools like Dependabot could pick it up, so we wouldn't necessarily have to do like just pin to main, but you can let your dependency tool grab the next version. But it seems like in the current method of doing that, we would basically need a whole spec version to rely on that.
Yeah, and that's bit us before, I feel like, or we've been paranoid that it will bite us. Can't remember if it specifically bit us, but once we released the version 1.1 of the spec, a lot of people would pin to just that version of the conformance test, and then we could never fix the conformance test going forward without making a spec release. So separately tagging, or in this case, what I was trying to do was just go against the environment variable there. Just something so that people aren't pinned to the version of the spec, one or the other. I will say, I think there might be some challenges on our side if we were to use that tag. Because on our side, somewhere in there, we're looking for that reference. Required bars. And we went to find that directory conformance version here. So I was looking at the dir name. So there is stuff in there looking for that version. There might be some breakages if something weird happened there. I have to check that one. This might be an amazing find from, might have been Josh that found that.
Does I guess yeah, I'm going from the standpoint that it's ideal not to just at main your GitHub actions, especially since um, those actions potentially have, I don't know what amount of scope we need here, but it needs like registry. Um, it at least needs registry credentials.
Credentials to a registry, whether it's like a temporary registry, it gets spun up in the background.
Yeah, but spun up in the background could mean that it needs like cloud credentials or something to do that as well.
Depending on the registry.
Yeah.
But instead of just having at main or at whatever branch you're on or at version, you can say at in a whole digest and then comment off to the side that say, hey, this is main.
Yeah, that's what Dependabot does. I believe by default
Yeah.
now. My point before was like if you're having Dependabot do that, I don't know if it will just automatically update main whenever it sees like the hash on main has changed, or if it's always going to try to resolve it based off the semver tag and then try to bump it from semver.
I would need some of the nodes Dependabot to answer that one. I have been using the Brandon version of Dependabot that does handle that, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, it's probably more of a Dependabot thing than anything else.
All right, thanks, Ajay.
But yeah, my point there is like if we were to have a separate kind of tag scheme, then we can just create some conformance specific tags.
If we had the separate tag scheme and it had like semver as a part of the tag scheme, would Dependabot pick up the child path in there? That would be the
Yeah, that'd be the question to respond or
yeah.
to answer. I assume we already kind of closed the debate on whether or not we wanted to move conformance to a completely separate repo.
We kind of chatted back and forth on that one, but I think we've settled on leaving it over here for now. It's in a subdirectory, it's got its own Go mod. So if we wanted to release just that, we could.
Oh, interesting that so it has its own Go mod in a subdirectory. Does that mean that that tag should be oh, wait, why is it called conformance 2? Um
Which one are you looking at? The branch name?
the module
Or
name on there. Why is it called conformance 2?
um okay, I gotta update that. Good find. Fix it.
Oh, is that in the PR? Okay.
Yeah, that's in the PR.
So if we were to create a Go tag, or like if we were to tag this, we wanted Go to use it anyways, we would have to create that like conformance slash semver tag anyways.
So if there are any tags like that, as soon as you start doing it, you're committed to maintain those tags going forward. If there are no conformance slash semver tags, I think Go just picks up whatever the top level version is. Like there,
Probably only if there's no Go mod in the root.
no, there's some
Uh,
logic in there where once you start doing the not just the Go mod for the subdirectories, but also once you start tagging it with those paths like that, that's when the logic starts to kick in. But without that, at least my experience has been that it just kind of keeps working on whatever, it has a fallback. But once you have anything in there that looks like the target, you're stuck with it. You now have to maintain that new tag.
okay. I'm gonna take your word for it because I don't want to read Go mod documentation.
Yeah.
It's
Sam, what you got?
I think probably missed this part of the conversation, but why shouldn't, like, seems like maybe it'd just be cleaner to put this in a separate Git repo.
Yeah, when we had gone through that before, I think part of it was just knowing that a PR to the spec would often need to pull request to the conformance itself. And so we're 50-50 on that. I'd have to go back and look at the discussions. But I think the main thing was just knowing that any PR, do you want to have PRs to 2 repos or PRs to 1 repo and then having basically what is it, a mono repo structure?
Yeah, I mean, this just seems complicated in terms of the discussion around tagging and organization and versioning, and having separate repos seems like it would make that easier.
I mean, my solution to tagging is just pin on main, but still
yeah, I
pin.
guess I'm going from the assumption that that's not what people want to do right now because of the recent supply chain attacks.
I get the hesitation to use an unpinned tag or an unpinned entry, but to have at least something in there where you say, let me go ahead and get the current stuff on a regular basis. Also depends on how many releases we're going to do, because we haven't been very active on the whole release cycle.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to just getting this in, stabilizing it, hitting 1.2, and then using patch releases for updates to conformance. Because we don't really use patch releases other than like a minor change in wording. We don't really use patch releases for anything.
Or a security fix. But that was over an image spec.
Yeah, but like we don't have any other code in this repo, so
We got some stuff, but I have to go digging. End user facing, hopefully there's not a whole lot. Part of it, though, is once we start to tag the conformance, if the version number of the conformance doesn't align with the version number of the spec, people get confused as to whether they're testing the right thing or not. Especially if they look similar. If we say this conformance 1.0, but somebody wants to test against the 1.1 version of the spec, they're expecting those version numbers to line up.
I mean, that's something we could document. I would expect more of the importance going like the other way. So you have like the minimum version you're trying to, or the maximum version you're trying to test against, but
if conformance gets up to 1.2 and the spec is still a 1.1 something, or vice versa.
well, we do have changes queued up for like a 1.2 spec already.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's unreasonable to just kind of roll forward with our versioning and then use patch releases for the conformance. If at some point they start to diverge, then then maybe we should think about moving it to a separate repository or subtagging. I don't even know. I don't even know what the name for that is. Like sub namespacing the tags.
I mean, even right now, if you have a registry you want to test against the 1.0 version of OCI's conformance, you would pull in whatever the latest version of the conformance is and then set the variable as, say, test against OCI version 1.0. You wouldn't pull the 1.0 version of the conformance itself.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm saying we should document that. But even in the case where it's like I want to test 1.0 conformance, you would still want to test it against like the latest version of the spec to make sure that like the backwards compatibility works with like the 1.2 clients or whatever. Like just because
So
you're at like an old version, doesn't mean like you don't want the like old tests for it.
but you'll fail the test because when you say to run the 1.1 test, it's going to run the refers, checks, and a couple other things. When you run the 1.2 test, assuming we get the pushing with the tags, you'll fail the checks to see if you're able to push a tag with a digest. So their
But that's
tests are
the
going to
point
fail.
of that configuration variable, right? Or that is an environment variable you're showing.
Yeah, but
You would set
that's
that if,
where that setting all comes into play, though.
yeah, I'm just saying I don't think it's a big deal that version that you set is different from the tagged conformance action. Like you should always want to run the actions against whatever the latest of the code is, even if your registry is at an older version. I don't think that's too confusing.
Yeah, but it's just that this environment variable here is different from the tag on the repository. And historically, that has not been the case for us.
The tag for the action or the tag for the conformance. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I said. I think that's just like a documentation thing, basically saying you should always use the latest to check compatibility. Set this to the version that you're implementing, but always roll up to the latest version of conformance to ensure that compatibility.
We need to update this if we want to not have the pin on main. In fact, this has been in our documentation. I didn't change that, I don't think. I only changed some of the variables in there.
I think you can move action.yaml into the conformance subdirectory. And then the uses would be open container / distribution spec / conformance at main.
Of course, once we do that, we're going to break everybody's got a dependency.
Yeah,
But-
sure. But they're also depending on main. So like they're getting exactly what they asked for.
But we told them to depend on main.
Yeah. That was our bad. We shouldn't have done that, frankly.
My goal is to minimize the breaking changes as best I can.
And I think you've done a good job of that. And the management of this breaking change is really easy, right? It's add / conformance, and then they're fixed-ish.
As we're splitting things into separate PRs, can we split that one into a separate PR so it's got someone else's name on it?
Could we duplicate it and just have this one like yell or something or like air out with a message that says like move to this? Maybe we
Most
can
likely,
do
yes.
that gradually.
Yeah, probably. Throw one of those deprecation warnings that GitHub's so fond of.
I mean, I'm already doing it now when you pass an old variable. I do a warning in there. No one reads it, but the warning's going to be there. The one gotcha on all this is I don't know how some of this code that we're going through looking for these paths and whatnot is going to fare. How do you check that? Also would need to check if there's anything in any of this. Yeah, so I've got dependencies over to specs to go.
Which is fine because Go is going to download those. It's not going to use them from the local directory.
Okay.
Like this is already a fully separate Go module. So the Go module versioning is already going to be the version 0.0.0 whatever.
Yeah.
Unless we do tags specific to conformance, but I don't think we need to do that.
I think I was pulling in a couple of these data structures.
And the model you're switching to is similar to the model that Go has adopted, where the best compiler for older versions of Go is the latest compiler. Like Go 1.26 is the best way to compile Go 1.24 code.
I agree with you, but you're getting ready to like poke at a very sore spot between me and the Go maintainers.
Yeah, sure. I also don't love that, but I think that it's consistent and is an example we can point to for another project doing something similar of like the latest version of the code knows how to handle multiple versions of the spec. So you don't need to point to the old version of the conformance. You should point to the new version of the conformance because it is the best implementation of the old specs conformance. That was one of your purposes for doing this rewrite, right?
Yeah. So in here, we run and make it all. We run conformance to our run make. I do need the make file. We can pull that logic into the conformance subdirectory, but I'm depending on the make file out there.
But you don't have to be, right? This could just be go run.
Go build and go run.
It could be go build, yes, or it could just be go run. We don't need to go build at all. There's no need for a make file here. This is go.
What have you got against go build? I get you though. All right. I'm still going to push if someone wants to go that whole path to break that into a whole separate commit, separate PR. Because I feel like I've thrown enough breaking changes at once into this one PR. Okay, we got 5 minutes left. I just wanted to highlight something that came across my plate since Derek and myself got tagged on this one, which is over in Container D, they're doing some platform stuff and they put some limits in there. So if anybody has opinions on what limits should be in that platform structure, be aware. This is out there.
Thought I LGT on that one already.
Yeah.
I mean, it's reasonable. There was another. I mean, if you want to chat about this one, there was another one in here related to the OS features that just kind of by using OS features, shaking out like what's the weirdness of it. That default Win32K. Basically, Containerd and probably every other runtime out there ignores the runtime feature. So as soon as we stopped ignoring it, though, the Windows images broke. I'm not actually proposing we do this one. I was just trying to figure out how the heck would you even do this if we were to do it, which is like how do we make the default platform say that it has Win32 support? And this is what the AI said works. I don't know if it works because I'm not a Windows person. But the general concept of like if an image says it needs Win32 and currently today we just ignore it, what would be the consequences of not ignoring that? And I don't know, Tiana, you're here, so maybe you can answer my question of like, what does it mean when an image says that it has the OS32, it has the Win32K? Like my interpretation of that is it's the image is saying it needs support for that, so it cannot run on like a nano server or something that doesn't have it.
I think that's true, but I think you'd also be hard pressed to run containers successfully on a nano server host, which isn't even a supported thing anymore, as far as I understand. So
yeah, I was kind of going with the impression that this value is probably completely not like ignoring it's probably the right thing to do. Like it probably has no meaning anymore.
yeah, it might have had meaning years ago, but I don't think it does today.
So we did merge a change that basically just ignores this feature completely on Windows to get the same behavior. But I was kind of going back of like, well, this would be the proper quote unquote proper fix, to like if a platform has Win32 feature, it should advertise it. But I don't know that it actually makes sense. Or maybe it just if it's just like always has it. I don't know. I don't even want to get into like that whole mess, but like I just wanted to kind of bring up it's like, well, that's something we ran into. Runtimes basically have been ignoring it since the beginning. It might have just been there as like something informative. And I have no idea how you would even properly implement it if we were to go about doing it. All right, you can go back to the other one. I just wanted to put a little bit more context around like what are the stuff we're trying to figure out there.
I'm just waiting for people to start using some of the new platform syntaxes and other tools that don't know about the new platform syntaxes. The plus syntax that you've got out there.
Yeah, I did make that. I did add another one there that does support some like URL encoding for that. So like there shouldn't be any limitations in terms of like, oh, because containerd did this, now there's like we're putting some limits on what the OCI platform object can represent. Um, Open for interpretations of like how the features will get used.
Like Linux plus GPU.
It's a unit test, but kind of an example of what could be the type of things that you might want to advertise, like the runtime might want to advertise and an image might want to specify a need for.
Unsorted plus arrowfs. Feel like I know who made that commit.
Eh.
Yeah, those will be interesting if that starts coming out and more people expecting that to be something that's supported across everything, and then we find out that tools like mine didn't implement that. That would be fun.
Do you use that format anywhere?
I use my own format, which
I mean,
means that
this format shouldn't show up anywhere. And for tools that are already ignoring OS features, which my understanding is every tool must ignore OS features if they support Windows today, because that previous issue proved that when basically Windows that feature, OS features is completely ignored. So by not ignoring it, yeah, we might run into some issues for people who are like, I don't know if there was Nidus or I think somebody else might have been using OS features just to cram random shit in, and now that will cause some issue with containerd because we're interpreting OS features in an image as an advertisement of what that image needs. And if there's nothing that matches that on the containerd side, it won't match that to any unpacker in containerd.
yeah, I shared it before, but I'm a separated key equals value pairing, and I'm using that for the OS version because we didn't have a way to pass the Windows version number string in there before.
Yeah, for the formatting stuff, like I have no opinions, and I don't really want other projects necessarily to just use containerd's formatting for that. It's mostly for us to represent it in configurations that aren't broken out to long structs. But I think in most cases we've tried to just use the full structs. Like in our API, we use the full structs, and probably some places in our configuration. That stuff like log lines and stuff like that, it might just show up.
Yep. Yeah, the other one, we've got a few different implementations out there as parsing the reference string of registry, repo path, tag, and whatnot. So it's been going off in different directions there. So maybe some standards are needed, but we're not there on the OCI side. Everybody's going different directions.
Well, the image reference as the like OCI : / or
That's the one.
no comment on that one. Still,
I mean, Scopio's doing it, BuildKit's doing it, I'm doing it, we're all doing it. But we're all doing it slightly differently. Just enough to make them incompatible.
well, then I think we're doing the right thing on containerd because we just don't support that at all. You just have to use a type.
Nice. All right, we are over time. I see people already starting to drop like they expected me to wrap this up. So good seeing folks.
You were just chatty today, Brandon. I dropped you some slacks.
Okay. That was the ding I heard earlier. I will check my slacks.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you back here next week. And same bat time, same bat channel.
Bye
Later.
bye.
Cheers.